Rachel Senes with City TV, and welcome to Inside Santa Barbara, the city's only news magazine show. We bring you up to date on the city's most significant issues, projects, and events. Early on the morning of October 15th, the Santa Barbara Police Department, along with neighboring sheriffs and police departments, the FBI, and dozens of law enforcement agencies raided 60 locations in the largest gang sweep on the Central Coast. And City TV was given the exclusive invitation to catch the gang crackdown called Operation Gator Roll on tape. It's 5 a.m. on Tuesday, October 15th. Still dark, most people in Santa Barbara fast asleep. But at Earl Warren Showgrounds, Santa Barbara police officers, SWAT team members, the FBI, ATF, sheriff's deputies, and other law enforcement agencies were wide awake and gearing up for the largest gang raid ever on the Central Coast. City TV had 4 videographers embedded in the operation. SWAT teams, armed with weapons and suited up in protective gear, made their way to at least 60 homes throughout Santa Barbara. Their target? Members and associates of Santa Barbara's East Side Gang, one of the city's largest criminal street gangs. During the early morning raid, these individuals started their day with a wake-up call of a different kind, the SWAT team in full riot gear in their homes. One after the other, they were handcuffed and taken away. In a press conference that same day, Santa Barbara Police Chief Cam Sanchez said that this investigation is a direct response to concerns from the community.
Our community residents have been fed up with this behavior by gang members. They're tired of their communities looking unsafe and being unsafe. They're tired of being intimidated at the market, their kids not being able to practice on the soccer fields because these criminal street gangs believe for some reason that these streets belong to them. I'm here to tell you that this is nonsense, and that is the reason that today's operation, I believe, has been very, very successful.
For the past 20 years, this gang has claimed territory east of Lower State Street, engaging in serious criminal activity including murder, attempted murder, robbery, and narcotics distribution.
They are among 28 defendants named in a racketeering indictment issued by a federal grand jury in Los Angeles late last week. This is the first federal racketeering indictment ever brought in the Central Coast.
All of the defendants in this case are being charged under the Federal Racketeer Influenced Corrupt Organizations Act, also known as the RICO statute.
That's the law used to attack the mafia, and it carries a penalty of up to 20 years in federal prison.
I had several prosecutors and several of my DA investigators assigned to this very important function because we took very seriously the increase in horrible increase in very violent crime on our streets.
The indictment alleges that the gang was responsible for the murders of 2 rival gang members last year and also alleges that gang members attempted to kill 6 others. Law enforcement officials say the punishment will fit the crime.
And the thing that really brings it all home is that they do not do time locally. They will not go to Soledad or Chino or anything like that. They get time in the federal system. They're going to Tennessee, they're going to Illinois, they're going back east probably somewhere where they can't associate with their the local gangsters.
But there are innocent victims who do associate with them. Their families most likely heartbroken while they watch their loved ones taken away.
They've either lost control of their young person or they're being manipulated and intimidated, and they have no recourse, and there's fear. And sometimes the fear factor comes from actually caring for that person and knowing they can't do anything for them.
With the presence of Immigration and Customs Enforcement officials, or ICE, the early morning gang crackdown sparked some controversy among residents who feared that part of this operation was an immigration raid.
If you're from Canada, Japan, Mexico, El Salvador, wherever you're from, if you're here illegally and you're committing crimes, you need to get deported. You need to pay the piper and then get deported. I support that fully. And that includes juveniles. But if ICE does not have targets that fall in that area, ICE won't be here.
Operation Gator Roll was only one day out of a long investigation. On October 8th, a federal grand jury indicted 28 members of the East Side criminal street gang on racketeering, violent crimes, conspiracy, and drug trafficking charges. Prior to early morning raids on October 15th, the Gator Roll investigation had already resulted in about 160 arrests. From its inception to October 24th, Gator Roll has resulted in 227 arrests and the seizure of 11 firearms, 5 ounces of heroin, 15 ounces of cocaine, 1 ounce of methamphetamine, 2 vehicles, and thousands of dollars in cash. You're probably wondering why this operation is called Gator Roll. Well, Gator Roll is actually a martial arts move that puts the subject into submission by attacking the head. Now, this operation focuses on targeting the top of the gang chain or the most active participants of the East Side Gang. But officials say that it's not just about putting gangsters behind bars.
There are 3 pieces. You know, we need prevention, intervention, and suppression. And you can't have intervention and prevention unless you have a real strong suppression, which is what we do. But we also participate in prevention and intervention with our police activities leagues, the partnership with Park and Rec, the partnership with our school districts, and with nonprofits. I mean, there are a lot of things going on here that are very positive. So that's important, and those are the options that we want to give our kids.
Law enforcement officials say the crackdown on gangs is far from over.
It is just beginning, folks. This is not the end. It is only the beginning.
We're not through. We're going to keep our streets safe.
Operation Gator Roll happened to fall on the same day that the jury announced the verdict of the Ricardo Juarez trial. He was accused of stabbing 14-year-old Luis Linares on State Street in March of 2007. The verdict, voluntary manslaughter. Well, when it comes to natural disasters, we know it's not if, but when. The city is actively preparing for emergencies that we can expect to see in our area, like wildfires or earthquakes. And recently, the city held an exercise for a type of disaster that may be less likely, but not less deadly. December 26, 2004, an earthquake that measured 9.1 on the Richter scale struck in the Indian Ocean. The massive earthquake caused a tsunami, devastating the seaside communities of Southeast Asia and killing hundreds of thousands of people. Although that tsunami was half a world away, a tsunami here in Santa Barbara is not a remote possibility.
Well, I know based on history that it was only about 60 years ago that there was a tsunami here. So we want to make sure that people understand that it's not an idle threat. It may be a remote threat, but it's something they need to appreciate. So I don't think to say that it's such a remote chance that we don't need to think about it, I think that's a huge mistake.
A huge mistake that the city doesn't want to make. That's why the city performed a tsunami drill last month.
Tsunami has not hit yet, so we need to continue to focus on evacuation and communication with the people in that area.
The scenario came from the 1964 Alaskan earthquake. I just took all of the data that I got from them and from their earthquake and used it for our scenario. Made it a little bigger to give us a 7-foot wave to at least inundate up to close to the freeway.
The drill started with a warning issued from the West Coast Alaska Tsunami Warning Center. The simulated alert warned that a 7 to 10-foot wave was expected to hit the city and that residents in the low-lying areas had 6 hours to evacuate.
We're just putting out notification that all city, police, rescue, and all personnel to be out of the evacuation zone ASAP.
The Emergency Operations Center in the police department was set up and city staff worked under the pressure of time, getting information from the field and writing press releases for the media. When the simulated wave finally hit the city, all the low-lying areas between Milpas up to Highway 101 were reported as flooded. Both sides of Highway 101 were shut down. In this scenario, several boats floated ashore. Southern California Edison reported that electricity was knocked out at the waterfront areas, including the El Estero wastewater treatment plant. As a result, all city residents were asked not to flush toilets or use sinks until the treatment plant was reopened. There were also sanitation issues. Raw sewage was in the water at the harbor. Also, Amtrak train services were canceled.
The effect of a tsunami on 1,000-plus boats, all the cars and vehicles down there and the fuel involved is going to be a problem that we're going to have to deal with.
This drill was a good test for city employees who played roles in a scenario far different than a normal day at work. In a real situation, city employees are considered disaster service workers and have specific duties, including city TV.
They're basically our first immediate way of getting information out quickly in ways that most cities don't have.
A lot of major disasters have similar components, so to prepare for one means preparing for all of them.
There are a lot of similarities, though, between the tsunami exercise and an actual tsunami and the effects of a major flood. So in terms of recovery and evacuation, those are very similar things. But we wanted an opportunity a few weeks ago to actually practice those unique things that relate to a tsunami, how we would get public information out in a timely manner, what the evacuation strategies would be, how we would go about actually conducting the evacuation in terms of PA systems on the police and fire trucks. So we try to simulate every aspect of an actual tsunami.
If it's not a tsunami, it's going to be a fire. And if it's not a fire, it's going to be an earthquake. And if it's not an earthquake, it's going to be flooding. If it's not flooding, it's going to be an airplane crash. There are so many things that could happen in this community. If you're not prepared for at least one of them, you're not going to be prepared for any of them.
On November 15th at 8 p.m., tune into City TV Channel 18 for our special one-hour documentary called Peril and Perseverance, a history of disasters in Santa Barbara. Well, Santa Barbara has a tradition perhaps like no other city in America. It's a tradition of community involvement and participation, and it comes in the form of advisory groups. Up next, we start off a new series about these groups with an inside look at the Architectural Board of Review.
For well over a century, advisory groups have played an integral role in the workings of the city of Santa Barbara. These boards, committees, and commissions do everything from recommend how much you pay for your water to determine the compatibility of building construction.
The purpose of different advisory groups is to give the city council the community's opinion on various policies and issues. So it's a way for the city council to reach out to the community and get a broad range of opinions from people of all walks of life.
One of the oldest boards is the Architectural Board of Review, or ABR. Its very existence is a testament to the idea that something positive can come out of disaster. By the early 20th century, Santa Barbara's multicultural past had resulted in a built environment that was a hodgepodge of architectural styles. In 1922, the Community Arts Association formed a group called the Plans and Planting Committee, which campaigned to create a more uniform style of architecture in Santa Barbara. When a massive earthquake leveled much of the city in 1925, it provided the Plans and Planting Committee a clean slate they couldn't have imagined.
The ground had barely stopped shaking when community leaders were meeting and saying, this is our chance. And these community leaders realized that they had shining examples of the Barrow Theater, the El Paseo, the City Hall, Santa Barbara High School. And these buildings, built in this sort of Spanish style, had survived the earthquake. And they were saying, this is our chance. This is what Santa Barbara should look like.
The original Architectural Board of Review was created that year to ensure quality construction and to establish Spanish colonial revival as the de facto style of architecture in Santa Barbara.
The originators of that thought that it was a great locale, great Mediterranean climate, good sunlight, all that kind of stuff that actually helped make a kind of a Spanish Andalusian Mediterranean architecture really prevalent.
83 years later, the duties of the ABR have changed little.
Primarily, we review projects that are either multifamily or commercial in nature. And the purpose is really to nurture the architecture of the city and protect the neighborhoods and to make sure that what's getting built in the city is appropriate and keeping within the architectural style.
We are looking at the mass bulk and scale of the project. We look at the circulation, the vehicular circulation. We look at neighbor privacy issues. If they're presenting a certain style, are they being true to that style? Are there elements of several styles put together? And if so, do they make sense or not make sense?
And if you have concerns about a project's mass, bulk, and scale, or neighborhood compatibility, the ABR is the place to voice them.
The building is gorgeous. I do agree with it. It's a natural, nice-looking building. It fits in to me. The style does, but not the third floor, not the bulk, mass, and the scale.
When we have so many advisory group boards meeting on a regular basis, it gives a lot of different avenues for the public to follow what's going on in the city and also participate by watching, observing, and commenting at those meetings as well.
The design review process may take some time, but architects and applicants usually agree their projects are better because of it.
The project has more eyes on it, more people looking at little problem areas that maybe the architect and designers aren't looking at particularly or don't have time to. And it's nice to have this feedback. Most communities, the feedback is after it's built.
And the applicants aren't the only ones to benefit from the process.
One of the biggest things I've gotten out of it is my ability to speak in larger groups. When I take projects to other boards in town, because there's several other boards in town, I usually have a very clear sense of what they're looking for.
I also think that I've gotten out an overall understanding of how the city building and zoning operates, which has helped me in my business and allows me to, at that level, also partake in other discussions with city staff and zoning planning people, helping craft different ordinances and things as they've come through the pike in the last couple of years.
So no matter what your interests are, there is a city advisory group for you. They offer one of the most accessible ways to give back to your community and participate in your government.
You really have the opportunity on a regular basis to dig into the issues, understand them more thoroughly, and really be a player and be a participant and make a difference.
The council really listens to what these boards and commissions say, and so in some cases their opinion will change the course of a decision.
I realized it was time for me to do something for the community that I could actually do some good in and have an input in, and I think I can do that.
For more information or to apply for an advisory group, go to the city's website, santabarbaraca.gov. Well, what makes Santa Barbara unique? Looking around, there are many things you can name, but there's something that you may not notice as you go about your day.
Hidden within the urban landscape, creeks wind their way throughout the city, providing beautiful, natural areas and important wildlife habitat, making Santa Barbara one of the few cities in Southern California that still have natural creeks. And as part of the watershed, they are connected to something much larger.
Everything from our streets runs into a storm drain. The storm drains lead straight to the creeks, and then the creeks flow into the ocean.
But there are still residents who are unaware of the direct connection between the street and the ocean. And Creek Week is one way to relay the message.
That's where the water and the pollutants go into the storm drain system, and this is where they come out. And we have openings like this all through the creeks in Santa Barbara. And looking down below here, I see plastic bags, styrofoam cups, all kinds of trash and debris. It comes down in here straight from that opening on the street, no treatment, no filtration, and washes right down to our beaches. And so we need to stop the pollution at its source.
The 9th annual Creek Week, hosted by the Creeks Division, sought to bring attention to this link.
We hold events that create opportunities for community members to get involved in creek restoration and creek and water quality projects.
Creek Week was a huge success. Extensive collaboration with nonprofit groups and businesses brought out hundreds of volunteers of all ages.
A lot of young people came out and got involved. We did creek cleanups, we did creek walks with them.
Where do you guys think everything ends up?
At the beach?
At the beach, yeah.
With educating children who are very receptive to the importance of keeping the ocean clean for the animals and for us, you hope that they share that with their family.
Horny Toad Clothing was one local business that participated in Creek Week. And although they had been doing their own cleanup at the creek next to their office, Creek Week gave them a chance to expand their impact and learn about creek restoration.
This site really mimics something that's higher up in the watershed.
As a company, it brings us together and makes us feel good as a company that we're really trying to get out there in our own community. But even as an individual, it, I think, helps us feel a stronger bond with what we're doing and where we're living.
It's a given now that people want to know they're going to work for a company that does more than just care about business. And I think increasingly that's almost as important a question from prospective new employees as, you know, what will I get paid, what are my benefits, how much vacation will I get. They really want to know that you want to be part of something bigger and you want to have more meaning.
And people do want to make a difference.
The health of the creeks affects the health of the ocean, and Santa Barbara is, the ocean is such an important part of Santa Barbara. It's why a lot of us moved here and live here and to enjoy the ocean.
According to a recent survey conducted for the city, outreach and events like Creek Week have a positive impact.
What we found is over 5 years of doing public outreach, we had significant gains in people's understanding of the sources of water pollution.
A majority of residents know that washing cars on the street and not picking up pet waste can cause serious water quality issues, and they were willing to do their part to solve the problem.
All of us who live in town are contributors to that problem, so all of us can be part of the solution.
To find out how you can help keep our creeks and beaches clean and healthy, visit sbcreeks.com. Well, Santa Barbara has one of the best nonprofit networks in the country, but because of the economic downturn, this holiday season could be especially challenging for those groups who need to receive in order to give.
Gas, groceries, and bills. The economy has impacted every aspect of people's lives. Across the country, many people are concerned about losing their homes or jobs. According to the U.S. Department of Labor, the unemployment rate is at 6.1%. This is the first time in 5 years that unemployment has risen above 6%. Families aren't the only ones struggling. Here in Santa Barbara, organizations like Transition House are also taking a hit. Transition House provides food, shelter, and services to families who have lost their housing. Transition House receives 3/4 of its income from private donations, but lately they've seen an increase in need and a decrease in giving.
We've been pretty much full for the last year and a half, and we've been turning more people away due to lack of space than ever. In the month of September, we turned 20 families away, 20 different families due to lack of space. We're also seeing a decrease in donations, and that's something that happens when there are difficulties in the economic climate or when there are multiple things that are pulling on charitable dollars from the community.
The goal of Transition House is to return families to self-sufficiency. One of those families is Miriam and Israel and their 2 children, who moved here from Arizona 3 months ago looking for one thing: a home.
The plan is to save as much money as we can so we can buy our own house. But for right now, Transition House is helping us, and we're saving money.
Transition House provides daily meals, activities for children, access to a computer, library, playground, and garden. But donating money to an emergency shelter may not be an option for many people tightening their budgets. But there's still a way to support organizations like this one without spending a dime. Yearly, over 1,200 people volunteer here, whether it's serving dinner, doing after-school activities with kids, or working in the administration office.
We rely on volunteers for our Thanksgiving meal, for providing different homemade dishes and turkeys, and then also for running the whole day and seeing that it goes smoothly as far as serving the meal and being with the families here on the holiday.
Transition House is only one out of over 200 agencies that partner with the Food Bank of Santa Barbara County. The Food Bank is a nonprofit organization that works to eliminate hunger by providing food, education, and other resources to a network of hunger relief charities. Last year, the Food Bank distributed more than 7.3 million pounds of food, including nearly 2 million pounds of produce. But just like Transition House, the Food Bank has seen an increase in need.
The 220 member agencies that we work with have reported a rise of about 25 to 30% in the need for the food that we provide. And donations are down in terms of donations from large companies. It used to be in the past that the food bank could rely on large companies giving us certain amounts of food, but these days they tend to sell that food through dollar stores and places like that. So there's a real need that can always be met by people just donating a few cans themselves.
You may think that you wouldn't be able to donate something as little as $1 to the food bank, but it actually goes a long way here. For every $1 that people donate to the Food Bank of Santa Barbara County, they can actually purchase $7 worth of food. That includes a box of cereal, 3 cans of food, some spaghetti, and a loaf of bread.
From hunger to harvest, with Thanksgiving upcoming, the Food Bank is getting ready for one of their busiest times of the year.
With all the food drives that we have in the holiday period, We get a lot of food that comes in, and that food needs to be sorted out, because we're very careful about the food that we get in. We check all the cans are fine, we clean everything off, and make sure it's of a standard to eat.
This volunteer lent a helping hand by turning lemons into lemonade.
I had about 7 acres of lemons, which I didn't know what to do with. And everywhere I look in Santa Barbara, there is just an abundance of food and produce in people's front yards, backyards, whatever. And saw that most of it just hits the ground and goes to waste. So I thought, you know, rather than that ending up in a landfill, why not find a way to initiate a program to bring it to the food bank? So I approached the food bank and I said, listen, I have this idea. I want to start a program. We're going to call it Backyard Bounty. We've been running it a little over a year now, and we've harvested, I believe, 35,000 pounds of fresh produce.
Of course, there are more ways than one in Santa Barbara to help those who need it most. Casa Esperanza Homeless Shelter on Cacique Street is also seeing an increase in need from the community during these tough economic times.
Taking the month of September alone, Casa Esperanza had over a 100% increase in the number of people who came to us seeking help. Last year we had about 60 intakes. This year we had almost 120 intakes. Over 55% of the people who came said that the last place they lived before they came here was in Santa Barbara County. So we've got lots more people who are falling through the cracks, but the good news is that when they fall through the cracks, more and more of them know where to go in order to get help.
For those who ultimately want to support themselves, every warm meal counts. Casa Esperanza serves daily lunches through its on-site community kitchen, and Thanksgiving is no exception.
I cannot tell you how desperately we need poultry, meat, any kind of donations of large amounts of food that could go to large amounts of people. We need those. The people can just drop that stuff off and bring it right to Community Kitchen, right here at Casa Esperanza. That's a great way to help.
But Casa Esperanza offers more than just a hot plate of food. There are 70 beds on site for transitional shelter. There's also services like case management, housing assistance, and counseling. These upcoming months will be especially busy as it opens up its winter shelter.
So during the non-winter months up until December 1st, we have up to 100 people who live here and 250 people a day who come and receive services. But on December 1st, our beds will double. We'll have up to 200 people who can live here. So for us, going from a transitional shelter to an emergency winter shelter, knowing that more and more people are going to need help, is a huge shift that happens every year, but it's a much bigger shift for us this year.
When it comes to the holiday season, many people think of food, but serving meals is more than just that. The people working and volunteering for organizations that help people help themselves are often considered friends and even family to those who depend on them during the most difficult times, like Miriam and Israel in the transition house.
It's like living, with your own family, because that's what we are, just a big family.
We've seen in the community what happens when families disintegrate. Children end up in juvenile system. They end up in the prison system. Drugs and alcohol. I mean, it just goes on. And by doing this, by providing a real basic, food for human beings, you are indeed helping to try to keep the family unit cohesive.
For more information on how you can help, visit our website, citytv18.com. Well, that does it for this month's episode of Inside Santa Barbara. If you have any questions or comments about the show, give us a call at City TV at 564-5311. You can also watch the show online at citytv18.com. I'm your host, Rachel Senes, and remember to get involved inside Santa Barbara.